Okay, I think we are live. Hi guys, I'm gonna just really quickly jump um, around a little bit and kind of get all of our ducks in a row. It's nice to meet you all folks that are joining us. Apologies for some of the tech issues that have been going on. Um, but I'm gonna really quickly put a link to a bit.ly so that you guys can hopefully tell me a little more about yourselves and then also be able to see this session as well. I'm also hoping that my students will join us shortly. I have two girls in Hawaii that would really love to talk with you guys, but I'm not quite sure when if they're gonna be able to jump on, and if they are, if you're gonna be able to hear us, but fingers crossed that that'll happen. Okay, cool. And then let me flip that. Anyway, hi, my name is Christina Torres, by the way. Sorry, I hope those of you that are joining us are able to hear me. That's been our big issue with some sound things going on. But yeah, my name is Christina Torres. I'm the 7th and 9th grade English teacher at University Laboratory School in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm really excited to talk with you guys today about student podcasting, which is something I started doing 3 years ago. Prior to that, I have my bachelor's in theater and English. So I have all those really useful majors, but I was able to use that to get my master's in education with a focus on digital ed at Loyola Marymount University. I'm really excited to talk to you. Hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next few minutes, we have two of my students, Nokia and Isabella, joining us. I'm hoping that they'll be able to check this out and see you guys. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just get started a little bit. You should have gotten a little, or you should see in the lower third of my screen, there's a link that you can fill out that helps me get to know you a little bit. Also, if you go to this link, it should also send you another link to the session intros as well. So hopefully, or rather the session slides rather. So I'm actually going to jump into that. So let me get that going for you guys. Excellent. Okay, so hopefully you can see a little presentation that I'll make big right now. There we go. So right now, this is my 3rd year at the lab school, and this is hopefully going to be my 3rd year doing podcasting with students as well. So the way that this came about is that I had a group of students that were reading Omnivore's Dilemma, and I was thinking about different ways that I could kind of get their opinions on the book. And I was driving in my car and I was listening to a podcast. I was actually listening to This American Life. And on that episode of This American Life, they were doing something with NPR's Youth Radio, where students go out and kind of record their own audio stories. And it was one of those beautiful moments where everything kind of clicked. And I realized, like, oh, what I really want to be doing is podcasting with my students. So a little of what we're going to talk about is hopefully we'll get to chat with my students, and then actually I'm going to spend the time we have together, which should be about a little over 20 minutes, just walking you through some of the resources that I have, and also talking about some key takeaways that I had too. Sorry, I'm just double checking to see if I can get our students in there. Carolyn, if you can hear me, if you're able to send me a link to this Hangout so that I can send it directly to the girls, that might be useful. Anywho, okay, so if you are in this session slide with me, it looks like this. One of the biggest things to look at would actually be right here. It is a bit.ly. Let me make it big on the screen for you guys. Basically what I've done is I have taken all of my podcasting resources and I've put it into a nice little Google Drive for you folks, so that you guys can see it. So if you click this link here, it should hopefully take you to a couple of different resources. Great. So the first one that I'm going to encourage you guys to open up is the actual assignment. So it's this 4th one right here. Looks like this. Or you can also, of course, see it on my screen as well. Okay, the girls can try this. Okay, so here we go. So like I said, what I ended up doing is I made this podcast a larger part of a paper that I was doing with my girls, or actually rather with my students. And so I told them they had to choose any kind of a problem. So that could be the food industry. We actually had a really big thing just a couple of years ago about building a telescope on Mauna Kea, which is considered a sacred site by the Native Hawaiians. And so that was one that a lot of my students that year debated about animal rights. And so I gave them this assignment, and the first thing that I realized is, wait a second, do my students even know what podcasting is? And so that's when I had to take a big step back and realize that one of the big things whenever you introduce a new concept like this, such as podcasting, is ensuring that your students have a good foundation for what they're doing. So if you go back to that podcasting folder, if you click the one right underneath podcasting worksheet, I actually spent at least a week with my students having them listen to podcasts and also listening to podcasts with them. So we started the day, for example, listening to This American Life's middle school podcast, which is great because I do this with my 7th graders. And so they enjoy hearing that it is not just them that's in a little bit of a crazy space. So, which is always a fun thing. But then part of their homework is to listen to a bunch of different podcasts. So if you go back to this assignment, you can see once you scroll down, I actually give them links to a lot of different podcasts. So that includes anything from Stuff You Should Know, which is one that they end up liking quite a bit. Or they'll find their own too. There's one called the 10-Minute Podcast. I've now started giving them things like Hidden Brain, which is one that they like a lot. Invisibilia. We'll do a little bit of Snap Judgment. They actually listen to a lot of Snap Judgment too. And then I ask them, what do you like about these podcasts? And so they'll listen to that for a couple of times. Then the next thing that I do is I just kind of lay the ground rules for the podcast, 5 to 8 minutes, at least 3 outside sources, some sound effects, and I walk them through that. So that seems like a lot. So what I ended up doing is putting together this document. If you go back to the folder, this is a nice little book that I've made for my kids called How to Record a Podcast. Sorry guys, I'm just, as if I'm pausing, it's only because I'm pausing to see if my students have joined us. But this has kind of neatly written out all the different ways that you can create a podcast. So sound, what is a teaser, where they can get some. And the nice thing is that recording a podcast, actually, when the sound is working, it really just involves using a computer. All of my students are on Google Chrome, so everything that I use with them is Chrome-based. I know other schools where their students have access to MacBooks and things like that. They tend to use things like some programs that you can download, but since we're one-to-one with Chromebooks, everything that I give them is Chromebook-based. So if you scroll down to Nuts and Bolts, or if you click the little flag to Nuts and Bolts, you can see right here that there's a couple of different Chrome-based ones, but this actually leads me to one of the key takeaways that I wanted to put up. So let me get to that slide real fast. Here, so one of the key takeaways, so the first one that we've talked about is modeling success. Asking students what they like. I realized too that, for example, I had one period in my class my first year that loved Snap Judgment. They were all over it. They loved Glenn Washington. They really liked the original kind of hip hop music that he puts under there. And then I had a group of kids that actually didn't like him so much. To be fair, I introduced them to Snap Judgment with like a Halloween really scary story podcast, and that might have upset them. So key tip, maybe don't do that. But also, like, they were actually really more interested in the conversational aspect of things like Stuff You Should Know or the 10-minute podcast. And so I told them that one of the best ways to make something successful is to use a template of something you like. So that's one of the reasons why it was important to introduce them to a bunch of different kinds of podcasts. The next thing and the biggest thing is letting the students take the reins. And that was something that I really learned a lot once I put out this little kind of book, is that I introduced them to a bunch of different things. However, once my students kind of got going and they knew the assignment, they really, really did it all on their own. Oh, hey girls, hey, hi guys. Are you talking? Sorry, I've stopped because my students are here. but I don't know if we'll be able to hear them. So you guys are muted. Can you unmute and talk for us really fast? Sorry for some little on-air checking stuff out right now. Let me stop screen sharing too.
Hi.
Hey girls, okay. Oh, I don't know. Carolyn, are you able to hear my students? They're talking right now. Let's see. Hey girls, okay. I'm not sure, ladies, if you can be heard right now. But it's nice to see your wonderful faces. You
You
can hear
too.
them when they talk, Carolyn? Okay, great. Okay, I can't hear you girls, but apparently the rest of the world can hear you. So that's good. Cool. Okay, so girls, those of you watching, thanks for being flexible. I'm actually going to pause a little bit so that we can talk to my lovely students on the on your right, their left, with the bob and the little teal t-shirt. That's Nokia. Nokia, if you want to say hi. And then on the other side is Isabella.
Hi.
Girls, do you want, I can't hear you, but if you want, maybe take a second. Yeah, you want to say hi and maybe like say your first name, your age, and I don't know, maybe something that you like to do. I can't hear you, but I believe you'll say something great.
I'm Isabella, and I'm 13, and I like to do water polo.
I'm Nokia. I'm 13, and um, I like writing.
And girls, if you could help me out whenever you're done, I'm sorry if you could. Thumbs up, great, perfect, yeah. No, Carolyn, to answer your question, I can't hear the girls, but I'm glad you guys can hear them, and I hope the audience can hear them. So we're going to use a lot of sign language and being resourceful. Girls, if you could talk a little bit with our audience, and I will just watch and try and read your lips. If you could talk a little bit about that first question that we talked about, what was your first reaction to the podcasting project? And also, what did you already, had you guys heard of podcasts at all before we did this project? I'm going to really be interested to watch this back and hear because I've never asked you that. So hopefully at some point I can hear, oh, we lost them. I'm not sure why they left. I hope they jump back in. So close. Okay, they're back. Or hopefully they're back in a second. No worries. Viewers, I so appreciate your flexibility. This is one of the many joys. My students are actually I'm actually on Big Island right now with my family and my students. Okay, hi girls. Girls, can you talk really fast and actually, and we'll see if we can hear you. So just say hi
Okay.
really quickly.
Hi.
And I'm going to find out if our audience can hear you because it might be that I can't hear you, but the audience can, which is totally fine. Okay, okay, great. Girls, so everyone can hear you. It's just me. So we're going to keep going. And then when you guys are done talking, just give me a thumbs up so that I know you're done and I'll move on to the next question. And I will hear your lovely voices when I watch the recording. But yeah, if you maybe want to share with the audience, girls, like what was your reaction to this when you saw the project? And also, had you guys ever heard anything about podcasting before?
When we first got assigned the project, we thought it was kind of going to be hard to do a podcast that like didn't sound scripted because like we had to think about what we were going to say, but we didn't want to make it sound unnatural. You want to say anything?
I was the only one who ever like listened to a podcast before, so I knew how I wanted it to sound like. But yeah, it was hard knowing that it would sound scripted and we would have to have like random music playing.
Great, thanks, guys. I'm actually able to hear you now using a mixture of my phone and this app, so we'll make that work. Very cool. Thanks so much, guys. The next thing is what did you guys, and you can be brutally honest. What did you like about this project? And if there's anything you would have changed, like because this is a session for other teachers to learn how to do this project. So what did you like about this? But if there's anything you could change, what would you change?
I like the part that we got to like pick our own groups and we got to like pick our own topic, because then it would have been easier for us to work together and like do a topic that we were interested in and we actually wanted to talk about.
I think something I would change would be my music choice, because we had to have music, and so sometimes there'd be like long pauses of music, and it would be just awkward. So yeah, just don't just know when to have music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, girls. I heard a little bit about that you guys liked getting to work with each other. I'm talking a little bit about the music choice. I'm wondering if there's anything you could share with the teachers that are watching, like if you could give them any feedback or any thoughts on what they could do to better, like what they should know about doing this project with kids. Also, like, do you think this was a valuable project? And if so, why? Not why too, though.
I would say that you have to let your students pick a topic, because if it'll be hard for them to actually write out a script and talk about that script while not sounding scripted. So
Maybe
during when they're doing the podcast and they're reading the script, they might go out of the script and actually have a conversation.
yeah.
They have to be comfortable, and you should just let them pick a topic they want to talk about.
Or sometimes for like some people it's not the best to write out a whole script, because then they'll just like keep reading it, or like sometimes they'll just make mistakes and keep on starting over. So sometimes maybe you just need like an outline of things you would want to talk about in your podcast and just like create a conversation off of that, because that's like what we did, because we didn't want to sound so scripted.
Great. Thanks, guys. I didn't hear what you said, so you could have said anything about me, and I don't know what you said, but I'm hoping it was generally positive. I want to make sure that I'm good with your guys' time. What I'm going to do, folks that are watching on Twitter, I should have said this at the beginning, and I'm sorry. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask my students, I'm going to ask girls if you're able to stick around for like maybe 3 or 4 minutes in case any questions pop up. But also, ladies, I want to give you a chance to share any like last thoughts on podcasting, or actually like even like why do you think it matters that kind of students get to share their opinions on things. If you guys have any thoughts on that, or any general thoughts you want to share with anyone watching, that would be great.
Sure. Um,
This was a pretty fun project because we got to put together like all this music, and then it was like we were actually on like a talk show, and it was pretty cool to do. It was a pretty fun project.
and we also shared it with the class, so it was nice to hear others' podcasts and them hearing ours.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, guys. I'm going to pop over to Twitter really fast and see if there's any questions for you guys. Let's find out really quickly. Maybe, there we go. No, but girls, students are also agree with you guys that they dug the fact that you guys are able to choose your own topics. So I'm glad that's definitely something we can tell other teachers, like really letting students have that kind of access and those capabilities is really essential to students feeling invested. So I'm glad that's worked for other things too. Okay, just for the sake of time, because we have about 10 minutes, I'm going to jump ahead. Girls, you're welcome to stay on. I'm going to talk with these folks for about 10 more minutes. And if there are any questions that pop up for you guys, I'll send them back to you. But I know it's 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and I appreciate you girls getting up. So you're welcome to stay on, but you certainly don't have to. But thank you guys, and it was super good seeing you. If you stay on, I'll let you guys say bye at the end too. But I also want to, yeah, you guys are super great, and you guys are awesome. So up to you. You guys can decide. Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to screen share some stuff in a second. So whatever you guys decide to do is good. But yeah. Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to really quickly move on, folks that are watching. And yeah, thanks so much. Cool. Thanks, girls. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So this, cool. So kind of jumping back a little bit. It's funny that we bring this up. So what I'll show my students is a couple of different apps they can use for recording. Here's a big thing I want to note though, and I'm sure if the girls are still on, they would probably agree. And I say this a lot. Odds are, no matter how tech savvy you are, and I consider myself fairly tech savvy, I'm a digital native if we still use that term, your students know more about technology than you do. Like 100% of the time, they're just in it so much more. I mean, I've already learned like all the different things I can do on Snapchat for a group of 7th graders this year, including multiple filters, which is exciting. But what I learned is I give students these few apps just as a backup. But then I always stop and I say, if you find something better, you should use it, because a lot of times kids find something better. Especially, when they've been playing around on the internet so much and things like that. My kids have been able, I mean, all of these apps that are in here were actually because the first year my students found all of these. I had found ones that no longer exist and are kind of buggy. And it was my 7th graders 2 years ago that found all of these apps that still generally work today. So that kind of leads me to this other key takeaway here, is let students take the reins. Honestly, once I gave my students a template for what a podcast should sound like, and I shared with them a rubric, which I'll show you guys in a second, they astounded me with what they were able to find. Frankly, they didn't need me. All they needed was time in class, the reminder to bring their microphones, and space, because they were able to put together products that I don't think I could have put together some of them. Just the way they were able to integrate music and sound effects. And I know that was something that I believe the girls talked about a little bit too. The next thing though, is after that, so they'll get to, recording their podcast, but then the biggest thing is also, what do they talk about? Which leads me, if you go back to this folder, there's a little podcast script worksheet that I actually didn't use last year, but I plan on using this year a little bit more, where I do give students an outline for all the things they're going to talk about. I asked them to put it in a group. They have to title the episode and create a little tagline and things like that. Which leads me to sort of this big third. One of the reasons I chose Isabel and Nokia, and then they were part of a group with Tia, who wasn't able to join us, is this third one, having honest adult conversations about content. I'll put the link up, but these 3 girls in particular did a really, really honest discussion about race and racism and police brutality that I hadn't talked about. I mean, I'm not sure if the girls are strong, but I hadn't talked with you guys about, honestly, because I didn't know if they were ready. But they brought it up on their own. And that's when I kind of realized that my students are much more attuned to the world sometimes than I think I've given them credit for in the past. And they're reading these things. I call you guys this group of kids the Tumblr generation. A lot of them on Tumblr, reading about all kinds of different things, and they know what's going on in the world. So I think obviously being age appropriate, but having really honest adult discussions about both what's in their content and also what they're going to talk about is key. Because I would hate to kind of hamstring students into thinking, oh, well, we can only talk about animal rights or food or any particular thing. One of the big things about them choosing their content is being able to take the risk with them when they're like, we want to talk about racism. Instead of being like, no, I don't think you guys are ready. I said, okay, let me hear what you guys have to say. And their thoughts were really, really great. That's actually why their podcast was picked up by a couple of news sources, because they had, I mean, you guys had such a great discussion about racism and how it affects you guys. So I was really impressed. My last sort of key takeaway as I'm seeing things on time is seeking joy and not perfection. I leave at least a week at the end. If you go back to this podcasting folder, I leave at least a week at the end and I normally do this at the very end of the year, but I leave a week at the end. I'll fix that so that you guys can see that. But it's basically just a Google form where they have to listen to other students' podcasts and review them. You could do it I use a Google form because my students have one-to-one and it's fast, but you could do it on a handwritten worksheet. You could do it on a Google Doc. But basically, we listen to every single podcast too, and we have an honest discussion about what worked for us and what didn't. You can also kind of scale that. So I think last year my students were able to go home and listen to all the podcasts. And so that really worked. And then they reviewed it as part of their homework. So that worked really well. If you guys ever want to see, by the way, some different examples of that, if you go to this little SoundCloud that I have, that should have all the different podcasts that I've done, including the ones that Nokia and Isabella did as well. But I've got a couple of different really great ones here that you guys can check out as well. And then kind of the last thing actually leads to this is sharing. So a couple of things to note about sharing is that I hadn't thought about until the first year I did this project is it's important to consider the license laws for where you want to upload, or actually also the user age requirement is what I'm thinking of too, because there are some that you can't create an account until you're 13 legally. For example, I think Twitter might be like that too. So since my students, some of them are on the cusp between 12 and 13, I don't have them shared on their own. Instead, I have I put it on a big SoundCloud. I upload all of them. The students record it and then they share it with me, and I upload all of them from my computer to one big account. And then I'll give that link to the students so they can listen to each other, to parents. And I warn students, hey, your parents are going to have access to this. And then finally, also, I will put it up for you folks to hear, which is actually how I started doing this session with groups. Is I had started sharing my podcast and people were really interested with that. So I think one of the biggest things when I think about why I like this project is the ability to share my students' voice. I think a lot of times we're in such a place of authority in the classroom. I'm in the front of the room, I'm talking, kids are listening, you guys do this, you guys do this. It's a rare treat when we stop ourselves and realize that we're not at the center of that classroom, that what really matters is our students and what they need and what their options or what their opinions are rather. And so if I'm going to have students kind of put in all this different work, I'm going to stop sharing really fast. Oh, hello, sorry. There we go. Hey, okay. Yeah, that's kind of one of the last things. Okay, great. Sorry, I'm just seeing some questions. But there's, I think for me, it was some of the getting to hear their voice and realizing like their voice is what's at the center of my classroom was really important. We have a couple of minutes, and I saw that there was a Twitter question. And so girls, I saw you typed your answer, but if it's cool, if you could, yeah, if you could maybe share your answer verbally and maybe talk about why. Would you guys ever podcast again beyond the classroom? I saw your answer, but if you want to share it why, maybe expand on that, or maybe be like, what would make you more comfortable? Go ahead, guys.
We probably wouldn't do another podcast outside of a classroom unless we were asked to.
It's just because we only did a podcast because it was a project, but like we got into it, but we had a time limit, so we had to stop somehow. But if we were to continue, we could continue and we could talk for a pretty long time. So that's why we would be comfortable with doing it again, because we would know what we wanted to say and how, and it would just be a continuum.
Great. Thanks, guys. Actually, Kaylin was really helpful in sharing what you guys said. I actually hadn't thought about that, and I really appreciate that you girls brought that up. If you saw folks watching in the little that I give out, I put a 5 to 8 minute, partially for my own grading, because this is hard, but also to teach. I've definitely had students that ramble on about not really talking about much. I had that happen my first year. As the girls pointed out, they could have got, perhaps ladies, maybe in the future, what I can help share it with Miss Torres. Girls, I would be interested in sharing and listening to other students' podcasts. Like if other people did that, would you be interested to hear what other kids said? You guys can unmute and talk too now.
Yeah, it would be pretty interesting to see other people's podcasts and like look at their different perspectives on things.
Yeah, I guess it'd be okay.
Great. Well, thanks so much, guys. I think, yeah, I think getting those different perspectives is great too. And that's why I'm happy that I was able to share your guys' perspectives, girls. I know we are at time, so I'm going to wrap up. Folks who joined us today or who watched this later, thank you so much. As you can see, we were playing around with tech and sound, but we made it work. And I'm really grateful, especially to my students, to Noki and Isabella for waking up early on a Saturday and doing this. Girls, lunch is on me at some point. We can hang out and get a snack. So thank you girls so much. I'll give you guys a chance to say bye to in a second. But please, there's a link at the bottom of my lower third. You can also find me on Twitter at bibliophile. You can find my website at christinatorres.org if you want to reach out or get in touch with these great students too. I can put you in touch. But thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. Girls, you're also welcome to unmute and say bye as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, guys.
Students that are gonna do podcasting in the future, just be comfortable with it, and once you get into the podcast, just go with a conversation. Like talk to like people you're working with, or if you're doing it by yourself, just like talk like you're talking to an audience, because yeah, you'll feel more confident in how you will do the podcast.
Okay, I'll let everyone go. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
So thank you, girls. What great advice from girls, talking to an audience, sharing good tips with us. Thank you so much. For those of you who are still with us, I would invite you to please stay and join us for our keynote, which is coming up with the International Literacy Association presenting their 30 for 30 award. So do stay with us and join us for our next session, which is going to be our closing keynote. Thank you so much, Christina, for sharing your tips on starting podcasts with students. And thank you, girls, so much for joining us all the way super early in the morning and giving us great tips for our teachers, our future podcasting students, and for all of us in the audience. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.